Hey, what's good, y'all? How's it going? If you don't already know, I go by Nublato, and thanks for tuning into my review of Injury Reserves by the time I get to Phoenix. To get some background on the group, these guys originate from Tempe, Arizona, and their core sound is described as industrial glitch hop with experimental elements to it. Their members include Richie with a T, Parker Corey, and late member Stepha J. Groggs. And lastly, some of their previous projects, which you may have heard of, include their EPs Cooler Colors, Drive It Like It's Stolen, their mixtapes Depth Chart, Live from the Dentist Office, and Floss, and their self-titled debut, Injury Reserve. Now, this is not my first introduction into Injury Reserve's music, but I definitely don't recall it sounding like this project. I've heard several singles from their debut record, Injury Reserve, such as the innovative rap song tutorial, where the vocal sample they use goes step by step on how to make a rap song on the track, and I think it's a pretty cool concept track. And there was also the track Jailbreak the Tesla featuring Amine that has an addicting hook of some glitchy industrial elements to the beat. For whatever reason, these tracks didn't lead me to checking out any of their other work, which is a poor choice on my part. But what did have me check out by the time I get to Phoenix was the positive reception that the album had gotten from various sources, and the intrigue I had had from their contributions to Amine's debut album, Limbo. The track Fetus ended up being my favorite track from the record with their industrial production and their lyrical contributions to the track. With these combined elements, I was intrigued enough to finally give this record a listen a few months after its initial release. Being aware of the surrounding events of this album, I would be lying to myself if I said that it didn't affect how I listened to the project. However, me later finding out that this was recorded towards the end of 2019 and throughout 2020, I noticed in their lyrics on how the lockdown and other unfortunate events that occurred had taken a toll on these guys. For example, they mentioned the Phoenix forest fires and the riots occurring in the US due to the unfortunate passing of George Floyd on this project. I know that these had a heavy impact on most of us at the time, and it definitely shows with these guys on this project. Besides that, the event that is really tough to talk about is the death of their groupmate Groggs, and with the context of his passing involved, along with the events just mentioned as well, that made the whole listening experience even more heavy-hitting than it already is. Getting into the music, Outside is the opener of this project and is led by a sample from Dot, which is then followed by Richie with a T spitting his verse sporadically with a delivery that sounds like he's trying to take in everything occurring at the moment while trying to hold it together. His flow is definitely something to get used to, but the way that it's delivered is great, and his voice fits in with the beat and backs his subject matter. The type of flow and energy makes this track sound even more raw, and the production of the track is consistently evolving into something that eventually sounds like something hella ominous. It's backed by repetitive tap synths and heavy breathing that's panned to the left of your headphones. And from what I'm able to take in from the lyrics is that these guys are trying their best to make sense of the current state of the world at the time with the loss of their groupmate Groggs. Richie also just sounds fed up and tired with lines like, "Let's call it all that bullshit. What's with the elephant in the room? Let's talk to him. Come on, let's talk to him. Don't hide it, yeah, with all that walking in circles." This seems to be the leading theme of the album based on the singles released prior, but this is a raw way to show how grieving is not always a clean-cut process. Overall, this is a great way to open up the album, and it was one of my favorite opening tracks that came out in 2021. The album is a glitchy descent into madness at some parts, while other parts remain on the experimental, ambient, and lo-fi end of things. One of the tracks that represents the former is Smoke Don't Clear, where it features glitched out production and some fade house perks, and a hook that's layered and pitched up, which may be one of the best on the record for me. For the latter, the tracks SS San Francisco, Knees, and Top Picks for You are on the low-key end of the spectrum with the track list. They do a great job of breaking away from the higher energy tracks, Smoke Don't Clear and Superman That, and bringing in the listener to be able to get more personal on the track. Speaking of Superman That, this is one of the lead singles for this album, along with Knees. I love the sound choice on this track, and the guitar sample is from Black Country's New Road song, Athens, France, and it sounds great on this track, and I think it fits well with the electronic sounds and the panning background vocals that you hear throughout the track. And speaking of panning, they use it so well that the voices heard throughout add to the track's ominousness, and had me second guess if something else was in the room with me as I was listening at some point. What I can take from Superman That's lyrics is that at the end of the day, no matter what you do or how you end up moving in life, we can all get taken away at any moment. So you can blow yourself up all you want to, but it's a harsh, unavoidable reality for all of us. The energy that this track has makes it one of my favorites from the album. Top Picks for You is up there with my favorites on the project as it takes a break from the highly experimental tracks that precede it. This feels a lot more melodic, and the singing in the beginning is a breath of fresh air. For the lyrical content, the track describes how algorithms of the internet or just simple habits can make it seem like a person who has died could just hop back into what they were engaged in as if they never passed. These things are also like constant reminders to those who are still living. This could be going into someone's Netflix account just to see what they could have or would have been watching, or going into the room of the deceased and seeing what they surround themselves with and the habits that they formed. This is a very personal track, and the production helps sets the dreary atmosphere. The looming synths, sub bass, and the lack of drums and ambient sounds bring the track together with verses from Richie as well. A few other things that make this project great for me is their use of panning, very faint vocal samples, and the range of Richie's vocal performances. The panning that they do on some of the instrumentation and their use of vocal samples only increase the amount of immersion the album gives you, while also making it feel like something from the afterlife is making attempts to contact you. Groggs has a verse on here that gives similar vibes, where his vocals are layered and it sounds very spectral and gives me a pretty uneasy feeling. And the record has a solid opening track with Outside, and it closes out with the track By Storm as it wraps up the album. And the way that By Storm's instrumentals form definitely leaves me feeling more uneasy and more worn out than the supposed uplifting feeling that the track's supposed to give you. At least that's just what I think about it. My only gripes with this project are on the track Footwork and the Forest Fire. While Richie delivers one of my favorite verses by him on the project, I wasn't a huge fan of Groggs' verse on here. I think the main thing about it is the vocal delivery and the sound of his voice on the track. Compared to Richie's verse, it doesn't sound as full to me. But all in all, the track put together sounds a lot more sonically disjointed than the rest. Despite the short list of gripes, I think that this is an overall fantastic project, and it definitely encourages me to give their other projects another try, and I encourage you all to do the same. I'm going to give this one a solid 9 out of 10.